Welcome to Acorn to Oak with Pennie Quaile-Pearce and co-host Matthew Donnachie. Within each acorn, there is the DNA that strives to be a mighty oak tree. All it needs to reach its potential for greatness is to be activated. You are the acorn. On this show, we will share with you the tools and guidance you need to grow into the person you are meant to be. And now your host, Pennie Quaile-Pearce and co-host Matthew Donnachie.
Hi everybody, it's Pennie and I'm here with Jill Pay this evening. Matthew's not joining us, but we're talking about conscious parenting. And basically, it's a minefield. Everybody has their own ideas about what conscious parenting actually is. And nothing really prepares us for being a parent. The sleepless nights, the chronic tiredness, the joy, the worry, feeling that you're not enough, the need for organisation, being one step ahead if you're lucky, the constant washing, cleaning, changing in the early days to the why, and the no's of the twos. And, beyond understanding why our children act the way that they do and the impact of our parenting style, how we react when our child is under stress, the strategies of how to grow their self-esteem and help them develop effective study methods, fostering their natural talents, remaining calm and centered when you feel like you're in the middle of a battlefield, establishing loving authority in your home, which creates open communication and builds trust, building an atmosphere of harmony rather than criticism or bickering or put-downs, and resolving disagreements and conflict constructively without power struggles. How to recognise our parenting habits and how they can destroy self-esteem and weaken relationships. As I said, it's a minefield, and when you actually look at all of this, you just think, why on earth do we have children? You laugh hysterically and usually come up with, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Or you may have not had much choice. It may have been that, you weren't necessarily trying for a child and it happened anyway. And it's, as I said, Jill is with me today. So, we are both mums, so we understand the stresses and the strains. And we're not talking about it without hands-on experience. So, hi, Jill, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really happy to be here and have a great discussion, I'm sure, about all of these things. And I think one of the things that I always felt was that it doesn't come with a guidebook. There's no instruction manual when
you're faced with having a child. Yeah, definitely. And conscious parenting is to help your children develop healthy brains, healthy self-esteem and trust, and nurture their talents, and bond, and establish a great bond between you and them. And it sounds really easy when you sort of read it out. Or you talk about it. It sounds really easy, but the actual. I think very much so. It's the shock of realising this tiny wee scrap of humanity belongs to you and you are responsible to them. And when I say belongs to you, yes, obviously in the bigger sense, no, they don't. But, you are responsible for them. And if you don't look after them, they're not going to thrive. And it's really, really interesting stuff. And I think, for me, it's looking at, the different steps, sometimes looking at the different stages. So this evening we'll definitely be looking at, basically from 0 right the way through up to about 12. And different areas of the brain are, developing at different stages. And when you think of, those first 3 months of 0 to 3 months, and I can remember this with Hector, it's just like, whoa, this guy, and obviously he's a boy, so this guy's brain is developing at such an amazing rate. And they have, millions of neuroconnections within the brain. And within the first 3 months, it's really interesting when you actually look at some of this. Within the first 3 months, actually half of them disconnect, because it's within those first 3 months that they're actually looking at what they need and what they don't need. So it's like, you have this massive neural network in their brains, and it switches. Some of them switch off. Obviously Hector was bottle fed; he wasn't breastfed. So some of those neural pathways, which are open in some babies who are breastfed, would have closed down in Hector's brain. So again, it's just incredible. And when you actually think about it, the hindbrain, or what they call the reptile brain, is where fight or flight is obviously, the hindbrain is very much about survival. It's not about thriving, it's about survival. And the fight and flight mechanism is very, very prominent in a baby's brain. But the other, so there's option 1, there's the flight, there's option 2, which is the fight, and there's option 3, which we hardly ever think about. And the option 3 is freeze. So a flight is all about anxiety and needing to move and avoiding confrontation. So, to flee is about moving and getting yourself away from the perceived danger. And, it's really important to realise, again, with fight, obviously it's about aggression, and it's about being aggressive. And it's, again, really important, when babies get to, as they mature slightly, and they get to the kicking stage, the kicking, the biting, the pulling hair stage. And it's about overpowering whatever it is that they are stressed by. And the most important thing to remember with, as a parent, as a conscious parent, is don't fight back. Whatever you do, don't fight back. Because that just makes the situation get more and more out of hand. The most important thing to do is to actually acknowledge their outrage. So they may be crying because they're not being fed, or it may be that, they're not getting what they want. But it's actually acknowledging it for them, that what they're feeling, whether that be mad, sad, glad, or scared. And that way you can actually help them pattern interrupt and get out of the fight and the habits of maybe kicking or biting or pulling hair. It's really important to give them a different option. And, obviously with the freeze, it's really, they're looking for protection here. So they have a tendency to lose themselves when they freeze. And you can see it. And I found it fascinating to watch Hector when he went through this. He would have that glassy look and look like he was going unpresent. And that was his way of showing us that he'd gone into freeze. And he didn't know what he wanted. There was a lack of desire, or an apathy, or a listlessness. And, if you offer support, it's very much just about being there and holding them. and making sure, whatever age they are, whether they're a baby or whether they're a toddler or whether they're going, further on, as in Hector now, who's 3. It's very much about that. And then offering them something like, for me, it's, do you want a hug? And giving him that hug and making sure he realises that hugs don't cost him anything; they're free, sort of attitude. And it's so important to remember that fight, flight, and freeze is very much present in all of a child's life, right the way through to adulthood, and actually in adulthood too. We tend to, whenever we are stressed as adults, we go back to that first etiology or that first wound. And it may well be at the age of, you go back to the age of 3. And it's really important to realise that with children, they need that type of support. They need the support to help them through it. To, as I was saying earlier on, pattern interrupt. So, Jill, what's your take on that? Have you found that with your 3 or?
Well, it's a long time ago now. Mine are all in their 30s. But I mean, it's fascinating hearing you put it like that, because actually, when I look back at or even babies that I know now, who are very young, looking at how it's. The important thing, I think, is that how they learn, and how when we, our patterns, our behaviour patterns, can also either reinforce or support theirs, so they can feel safe, so that whichever reaction they've gone into, that it's safe, but there's a way out of it. Absolutely. So it's that reassurance and support or reflection to them in the way we are. So if we catch ourselves becoming frustrated or in a similar mode, then we can do the pattern interrupt, and therefore they can see how that works as well. So it's
it's about one, showing by example, but also helping them learn and explore. One of the things that we found with Hector, especially if he went into flight, so he wanted to flee more than anything else, and it was either a loud noise or whatever it was that made him retract into self and feel uncomfortable. That humour and making him laugh was the best possible pattern interrupt that we could actually do. And it may well be tickling, it may be singing a silly song, but it was, very much about him hearing either my own voice or my husband's Luke's voice, to make sure that he grounded in that and knew that he was safe. Because one of the things that Hector was always very, very good at was movement. He was either a crawler or a wriggler, or he would show us. And at the age of 3, he still is a wriggler. He's like, so we used to do wiggly worm type songs or whatever it was, just to make him laugh and make him know that he was safe. But he didn't get into the fight response until he was a little bit older. But then he was, he definitely was a kicker and a biter and a puller of hair. And I think, again, it's very much about realising as a conscious parent that it's not personal. He's not personally kicking you and biting you and pulling your hair. It may feel so. It may feel like that, and it can be incredibly challenging, especially if you've got a very enthusiastic child like we have, because as he gets older, the kicking and the biting and the pulling the hair gets quite powerful. It can be quite sharp. And it's really, as I said, really important not to take your frustration back out at him. Even a tap on the hand is not helpful. It's actually, making sure that, you share the outrage with him and go, oh, that was terrible, and reinforce the fact that and acknowledge his feelings, as I was saying, and just saying, oh, that must have made you mad, or whatever it is. Even if he is not vocal at this stage and not very good at language, if she feels that her feelings are being acknowledged, then that's where you actually start to build trust, and trust is so important between children and adults. It really is important. Yeah. So and hugs are always very good. Whether it be option 1, 2, or 3, whether it's fight, flight, or freeze, it's really important that cuddles and hugs are important. And I think one of the biggest things for me, one of the biggest awarenesses I had early on was, it's like the news flash of the whole thing is, newsflash, by the way, kids are not made to sit still. They will not. They are not made to sit still. If they are sitting still, then, it's up to us as parents to encourage them to have movement. Going back to, obviously, Hector, he doesn't sit still at all. I mean, he just doesn't. His movement are us. But it's really important to not get into, we all do it, and and I have done it many, many times. Sometimes to sit them in front of a TV program or whatever, and then be able to go and get on with whatever you need to go on and get on with. But really limiting the amount of time that kids actually sit and stare at screens, whether that be on a TV, or whether it be an iPad or a game console or whatever, because actually they're not built for that, and it doesn't help with encouraging their brains to grow. Again, it's really important that they have a bunch of different things to do during the day. At the beginning, although I'm a children's nurse and I've done child psychology, it was really, you think you're going to get a nice, quiet, peaceful baby or peaceful child. I hate to actually say this to you, but it ain't going to happen. And one of the things that I learned very early on was, that climbing is really important for, a young brain to develop, because they have to learn how to balance, they have to learn how to trust, they have to learn how to, look, if they're climbing trees, look at a tree and see the route up the tree, and they're using and connecting many different areas of their brain. And this is really good for a developing child. And I know I used to love climbing trees myself as a child. And, I'm sure you did too, Jill, didn't you?
Oh, my God. I mean, I used to love all those kind of things. I mean, Daredevil or what, we used to go like on the swing until it was going almost over. I remember for ages I was obsessed with doing somersaults over and over again and things like that, and just feeling the buzz of it afterwards as well. And I think it's really important. The whole aspect of play is so important for development, and allowing children to explore through play, as Pennie, as you say, in as many different ways as possible, climbing, running, being with other peers, you know, and you know, we always joke, don't we, that when children have their Christmas presents, the things they play with most of the cardboard boxes, and
Yeah, absolutely.
that's purely because they want to use their imagination. They don't want necessarily to have it all spoon-fed. They actually want to engage their imagination and creativity. And I remember mine when they were young, they were always making dens. If it was a rainy day and we weren't able to go out, they'd make dens in the living room, you know, and
Absolutely.
like
Blankets come in real handy.
blankets. Yeah, you know,
Cushions.
and absolutely. And, you know, but otherwise we'd be out all the time. We would literally be out exploring and doing things. And I think it's really, really important. And I think going back a
Yeah.
little bit to what you were saying about the fight or flight and the emotional is actually if you can support your child at that very early age, that is the very key to having emotional intelligence as they begin to grow and mature.
Absolutely.
It's just
And it is really, again, as I'm saying, you know, conscious parenting is a minefield because everybody will have their own ideas, and you know, depending on what they've read, and you know, there's some great stuff on, you know, obviously the internet and everything else. When you actually Google conscious parenting, you'll be completely and utterly overwhelmed with the amount of articles and courses and various other bits and pieces that will come back at you via the net. But it's, you know, sometimes it's real basic stuff, and it's, you know, it's remembering that even, you know, down to food, you know, if wants to wean or not to wean, this is the question, you know, sort of attitude. And it's, you know, being child-centered and child-led to a certain degree. And when I say a certain degree, you know, the last thing you want is to allow children. You know, you are the adult, therefore there must be some discipline. And there must be some ground rules that are put down. But one of the biggest, I think, for me, one of the biggest ground rules or things that I found was so important with a toddler was making sure that when Hector first started eating, it's really important that they have a balanced diet. Now, both my husband is a vegetarian. I am what you call them, pescatarian. I eat fish. And one of the foods that is so important for children to get with a growing brain is the omega-3. And it's making sure, obviously, omega-3s come from oily fish, and it's really important that omega-3s, again, don't rush out and buy loads of omega-3 supplements, because that's not how it works with children. You know, they need the real stuff. And it was one of the things that, you know, obviously Luke and I talked about very much, because he is a vegetarian, that actually I was perfectly okay with, you know, again, Hector being mostly vegetarian, but the omega-3s and the fish that he really needed, he could have whilst he was actually growing up. And then again, it's very much people will make up their own minds as they grow. But you know, the real food, you know, not the good old fast food, but the real food, and making sure that they get plenty of varied vegetables, etc., etc., etc. And I'm not here to bash any vegetarian agenda here, because I'm not vegetarian myself. However, you know, it's getting them to taste things and realising what they love. I mean, one of the amazing things that we found with Hector was he's completely and utterly addicted to mushrooms. And we just look at what what's this about? What's this mushroom about? But literally, he would eat them raw. He would eat them, cooked. He just loved mushrooms. And obviously, it was providing him, he still loves them now at 3. But, when he was a toddler, when he was sort of 9 months old, I couldn't believe that he would eat mushrooms. And it was really quite hilarious because, mushrooms have a certain pungency when they hit the nappy stage. And I just look at it and go, oh my God. And I tried to actually reduce the amount of mushrooms he was having, but he wasn't having it. He'd actually literally just go through a pallet of bloody mushrooms, with lunch. Just used to shake my head. Anyway, we're coming up for a break. So we'll see you on the other side.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, so we're back. It's Penny and Jill, and we're talking about conscious parenting and having a few laughs here. And it was funny, Chris was just talking to us during the break, and he was just saying, is it just the males that lose all of their connections? And I went, no, it's as many females have. So I'm not being sexist because I'm talking about my son. It happens to both females and male children. So the other thing I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes talking about is sleep. And from the parental point of view, when the children are asleep, it's just like everybody just goes, oh, relax. But it's so important, however old the child is that they are actually getting enough sleep. Because it's during the sleep, it's like that's when the brain does all of the maintenance. It's like a car in some ways. If you keep on driving the car and keep on focusing, then you have no time to do the maintenance. And brain maintenance in children is so important. And, you know how tired you get when you don't get enough sleep, and how much focus you lack when you are in sleep deprivation. And also your memory becomes incredibly poor. So, for a child to, when you're beginning to talk, obviously, and maybe give instructions or trying to build vocal stuff, it's really important to make sure that the child is getting enough sleep so it knows what has been said to them. Because, poor sleep, again, leads to anxiety and depression. So it's getting them into a routine. As a youngster and as a toddler, they should be getting 12 hours sleep a night, from 7 till 7. It may be broken, but it's encouraging them to go back to sleep. And this is one of the things that took a while for myself and my husband to crack, was actually getting Hector down at 7 o'clock in the evening and making sure that he actually slept. He does get up sometimes during the night and changes, making sure that you put your child to bed in his bed or his cot at the beginning. If he moves then into the big bed or your bed or beside your bed, then that's okay. But you've got to make sure that you begin the routine, because if you don't, you're going to have a monster on your hands at some stage, and it is the regularity that is important, more important than the numbers of hours of sleep, to be honest. Did you find that you had problems with them, getting them down?
Well, I think establishing the routine, because I had 3 under 5, you see, so, I would have literally lost my mind if I hadn't had some kind of routine. But we made it fun. And I remember really clearly at one point, Camilla, my middle child, turned round to me. Well, she must have been 4 or 5, and she went, "It's dinner time, bath time, bedtime." And I went, "Yes, it is." So obviously she had got that one. And actually that felt like a high level of security for them, as well as giving them, what they needed in terms of the routine. And of course, occasionally they might have been sick or something might happen, but the routine was more or less consistent. And it was actually sanity for all of us, I have to say, because then
Absolutely.
I could, and I think, like you said, Penny, when the kids are asleep and you've had a really good day, or they've done a lot and you've been busy, and there's that moment when everyone's calm and asleep. I always used to sing to them, read to them as well when they were going to sleep, and I know you do with Hector. And that was such a nice. That's a lovely time of day, really lovely time of day, and so that they would naturally relax. Sometimes I'd be asleep before they were, though, I have to say, in those circumstances. But
Absolutely.
hey,
I can remember that photograph, that a really famous photograph of me when Hector was probably only a few weeks old, and my hair is stuck all over the place. I've got my glasses on the top of my head, and he's asleep and I'm asleep, and we're just sitting on the sofa, and it's just like complete and utter, and I think very much so at the beginning, for me, it was making sure that actually I would take a nap when he napped, because otherwise, at the very beginning, when your baby's waking up with alarming regularity sometimes to be fed during the night, it's really important to make sure that you get cat naps, and you actually make sure that you're actually getting some sleep in, because otherwise you do get stressed and you do have bouts of anxiety of, is this temperature really, too high, or what should I be doing, and is he teething, is he, what's actually going on. If you are sleep deprived as an adult, it's like a form of torture. It really is, because your mind goes to mush. And you really do feel, I think, very much in those first 12 months of having a newborn, it's you think you've hit Alzheimer's disease. You really do, because the clarity goes out. And so it's really important for both parents and children to get enough sleep. And it is just, as you said, just setting the routine. And, children love routine. They really do love routine. As you were saying, it makes them feel safe and secure, and they know what's coming. And I can remember talking with my brother who had twins, and very much one of the twins was very outward and gregarious, but the other one was a lot more shy. And he would ask every day because my brother was in the armed forces for some years, and he would just check, which bed am I sleeping in? And it was one of his anxieties. So Andrew basically would tell him, they would have the conversation at least twice during the day of, yes, you're sleeping at home tonight. Yes, you will be in your own bed. And it's amazing how... what anxieties actually children do have. And it's important to remember, and I think this is one of the most amazing things for me, was to realise that our brain is still maturing and growing up to the age of 24. Now, I had to take a breath when I first heard that, and I can remember hearing it when I was doing child psychology. Yeah, that is just, I didn't realise that. But when you actually think about it, a lot of young adults are in university at that time, or going on to further education. And you just look at it and go, wow, somebody got that right then, It is the last stage of brain growth between 17 and 24. But I was amazed and quite surprised about that. Any thoughts on that, Jill, or is it just a case of wow?
that is quite a while, but as you say, it does make sense. And I mean, it's very interesting in a way when we look back and we say, when I was growing up, the age of adulthood was 21. You became an adult at 21. And now then legally it's now 18. But when you think about that, you think, well, actually, in terms of taking full responsibility for your life, etc., then it makes sense that, it's in the ballpark of 24 years in terms of fully maturing into adulthood. So it's interesting, actually.
It is, and the trouble is nowadays is everybody wants to do things quick. It's smash and grab, isn't it? And this is the way it is. But actually, with brain growth and brain maturity, it takes time. When we actually look at the different ways of describing the brain growth, and there's all sorts of things like the reptile brain and the monolithic brain and the this brain and the that brain, and you just look at it and go, okay, fair enough. Do I really need to know all of these things? But it's very much about the different ages where different things are actually being addressed. And when you look at the age of sort of 2.5, and for 10 years, so it's from 2.5 to 12. This is where the survival of the group is. It's where kids actually start becoming more social, and they're looking at developing their personalities, their self-confidence, and their trust. And, it's really important from 2 to 12 to actually establish discipline and help the children establish discipline within themselves. Because, as I said, this is very much about self-confidence and trust. Too much self-confidence turns into entitlement, and it's really important to have that balance. And those years that are those 10 years are so important for the child to have balance in their lives. Obviously, too little discipline is not great, but too much discipline is not great. So it is, as I was saying, about that balance. And teaching them, assertiveness is good, because yes to what you want is, actually great, but no to what they actually don't want is just as important. So it's, the assertiveness needs to be balanced, because otherwise they will go into domination, and they will come up with, kids are great for this. They will use manipulation, they'll use seductiveness, they will not learn how to be genuine, they will seek and do favours, so that in the manipulation game, and they'll be looking, and they do learn this, and they do learn that from their peers, as well as they learn it from their parents, because this is where peer pressure comes in about, well, if I smile really nicely, I'll get another sweet. Or if, Hector's great one is if he goes, please, please, he, again, he's looking for biscuits. But, it's a please, please, and that angelic smile. And, sometimes, for me, it's teaching him, you get 2 biscuits, 1 for each hand. And that's it. That's your lot. And however much you go into plead, or you go into manipulation, or you go into angelic, and they, you actually see them bringing in these cast of characters. And from a spiritual point of view, we talk about archetypes, and boy oh boy, do kids play around with archetypes. And again, it's an opportunity to encourage a little bit of self-humour, a little bit of looking at your behaviour. And I go, for me, I just look at him and go, really? And he'll just look at me and smile even bigger, and I'll go, no, again, it's about hearing what I've said. You get 2, that's it. And it's also, it was a really interesting experience to see him go through potty training, and actually help him go through potty training, because if he actually did a pee-pee in the toilet, he got 1 sweet, and if he did a poo-poo in the toilet, he got 2 sweets. So it was really, obviously, and then the routine of washing your hands and, all that type of stuff as well, teaching him all of that. And he would basically bounce into the kitchen and go, and obviously we had a container with the sweets in, and he would just, okay, fair enough. But he then understood that chocolate was the best thing since sliced bread. He gets that from his mother, by the way, because I'm a chocoholic. And he wasn't into candy. Candy was, no, just chocolate. And it's, again, what is so wonderful nowadays is you can get charts, and he got a chart and a star and, obviously a chocolate and stuff like that. And we got through the whole thing within 3 weeks, which was pretty amazing. So he was completely and utterly dry during the day. And we did have a couple of situations where we have a dog, we have a Labrador, and he would watch the Labrador go out into the garden and have a pee in the garden and obviously a poo in the garden. So he thought that was the game. So we had to actually put that, make sure he didn't consider himself a Labrador, and actually, it took about 3 weeks for him to get the fact that it was the toilet that we were using and not the garden. But, it did lead to a lot of amusement from not just ourselves, but from our neighbours as well. So again, there's so much written about toilet training, and very much about using the positive statements and not the negative statements, and not actually saying do not do that. It's a case of turning it around and actually just using positivity and just huge amounts of praise when they actually do the right thing, rather than something that makes your eyebrows go up. It's just like, okay, fine. So again, it's very much important to look at those behaviours that a child is doing, so that again they do learn kindness, they do learn sharing, they do learn what the boundaries are, what the healthy and safe boundaries are, without too much no, don't do that, no, don't do that, no, don't do that. Because if you give too much discipline, and they will become submissive. And, that leads later on to, when they do something right, they feel that they've been lucky. And when they do something wrong, it's their fault. And if that is severe, then it will go into a melancholy depression. And, they will also not learn, when trust is lacking, it's what marginalises people and leads to, paranoia and thinking that, I never get anything right, I'm always wrong, yakka, yakka, yakka. And they set up these looping thoughts, which then leads to, as I said, a real depression. And, when you see children who are like that, it's really quite difficult then to turn it around and give them as much reassurance as they need. And, obviously the other part of this is when, we've had the lack of trust, but when people over-trust, where, there is a gullibility of... they will believe everything and anything. And, even to the stage where, I'm sure we have all suffered, and we've all had the spam where we've had people contacting us from Nigeria or, I don't know, somewhere, and saying, one of my relatives have died, and, if you send me your details, I'll send you... £1,000. Well, not even £1,000. It's usually a couple of million, isn't it? And you can have 20. You can have 20% of it, and people actually believing that. And this is set up. That gullibility is set up between the ages of 2 and 12, and you look at that and go, "Wow." I know in my life I've had times where I can be quite native, and I look at it and just go, wow, that's interesting. And I have a tendency to trust people more than not trust them. But I have learnt over many years, by the way, that actually, caution is a good thing. It's one thing I didn't probably learn in my first 12 years of life. I don't think I learned too much caution. I was quite like Jill, and as in, leaping all over the place and just trusting it was going to be okay. So rules are important. They really are important, and it's really important that you are consistent. and the rules don't change. I mean, it can change. Don't work, as Jill was talking about. If there's, if somebody is ill, or it's a special birthday, or you're doing something special. Yes, of course, then the rules can change. But it's also important to build the consistency that actually, when you say no, you mean no, and you don't give in. Because that's when you actually see children who just keep on pestering and pestering and pestering, because they know they're going to get their own way in the end. And it's really important to have those rules and those boundaries, and obviously to have discussed them with your partner. And, if you do that for the first 4 years of a child's life, you will actually consistently get good behaviour. After 4, obviously they're going to test the limits, because that's what a child is all about, and they'll look at you they'll look at you and go, "Oh, I wonder if I can push this one." And they will test you, but you will actually be able to realise that they are consistently doing behaviour that is not just helpful to you, but is helpful to them. And it's really important to get that in place, so that there is there's a foundation in which the child can build and look at their likes, look at their dislikes, and actually begin to look at what they're interested in, and for you as a parent to be able to nurture their talents and the things that they enjoy. I mean, for me, I don't know with Camilla and your troop. Did you have some indication of where they would like to be, or as obviously they're adults now? So did they show early their talents, or whenabouts did they sort of decide what they would like to do?
I think probably they're quite all-rounders, and they're quite rounded in all their skills and talents. So I don't think it was kind of that obvious at an early age. Alex and my son is very creative and likes to make and build things. So he's doing a lot of that, not necessarily in work, but in his own life. And Camilla is very much a people person, and always has been. So she works with people. She's teacher, So yeah, it's interesting actually, because I always kept an open mind about what they would do. I wasn't putting anything on to them at all about that. I think for me, I think as well, part of being conscious parent is maintaining a kind of air of curiosity or objectivity about, okay, as well as being engaged with the process, but also at the same time going, okay, what is this behavior about? What can I learn? How can I support them as well? It's a kind of maintaining an interest. I've always had an interest. I think some people don't appear to have an interest in their children. I just think they're missing a trick somehow around that, because it's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and and especially with me, I just love every day. It's just it's amazing how many different things we get up to, because I hate to being a 3-year-old. You could be doing 20 different things during the day, because their attention span is not necessarily that as good as an adult's. But it's been great to talk about this, and I think what I've asked Jill to do is that we will actually continue on a similar line for next week, because it is fascinating, and it is many, many years to go yet to actually talk about. So we'll be back next week talking about being conscious parents, because that never changes, I don't think. Okay, you take care and have a great week.
Bye.